From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Morgan. With me today is my handsome and talented co-host, Joshua the Devil's Business Bevan.
The Devil's Business? It's none of your business.
It is none of mine.
It's the Devil's
but
business.
But it's the Devil's Business.
Oh, boy.
Which is what one of the Manson family said when they burst in. I think it was to the La Bianca house.
I'm here to do the
Devil's business, and I'm the devil.
Yeah.
That's perfect for you.
Yeah,
you're the Devil's Business.
That was Tex Watson.
Was it Tex Watson?
I think so.
Okay. So Joshua and I and Charlotte and Fiona got to go on the Manson's Murderous Spree tour on Graveline Tours, which if you, they are sponsoring this episode. So if you go to graveline.rip and put Tipster40 in the promo code, you get 40% off of any of the tours they offer. And we've been on 2 now. This one was a little different. It was longer. It was hotter. And there were, we were in at the end of January, and it was just me and Joshua and Blaze. And it was like, we were like 2 little kids rolling around in a ball pit. Like we had our own fucking limo.
Oh, for sure.
So we were, with some people. And they were all great people, thank God, because I accidentally sexually assaulted alternately Joshua and the man next to me. I'm sitting in the second seat on the hump, and my knees are up around my chin. And I was grateful for all those years of yoga.
Yeah.
And poor Joshua and this gentleman next to me who was so gracious. Neither of you were trying to manspread.
We were both plus ones, too.
What's that mean?
Like He was.
You brought a friend?
No, we were the friend. I mean, I came with you guys. I'm not the true crime guy. I came with
you're the
you
co-host
as the
of this podcast.
True crime, and then he's
with his wife,
and it's her birthday, and she wants to do
36.
the true crime tour and the graves and all of this.
Yeah,
and
they go to Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Yeah,
he was a great husband.
Yeah.
They were the cutest couple.
Oh my God, they were super cute.
I would occasionally look over my shoulder to the back seat and say to her, who she was sitting next to 2 girls who were together, so it was crowded everywhere. I would turn around and say, I apologize for sexually assaulting your husband. And she goes, oh no, he likes it. Do it more. And I'm like, that's how you know they're an adorable couple. They'd been married 10 years. It was her 36th birthday. They were from San Diego, and he, came up with her and did all of the murdery things she wanted to do.
Yeah. So cute. So cute.
They were totally adorable. It was long and hot, and I'm crabby as fuck. It was like 100 degrees or something. Blaze did an amazing job of piloting a boat through, a vintage Cadillac funeral coach through the hills of Hollywood.
Yeah.
She did a great job.
And never swearing at any of the idiot drivers around her, which like at one point she said, what are you
in such a big hurry for? Yeah. Just polite on Santa Monica when somebody's cutting in front of us and they're fucking Tesla. What are you in such a hurry for?
I'd have given hand
Molotov
gestures
cocktails through the window. That's what I'd have done. Yeah. She was the epitome of a Buddha, like very calm. Maybe she's paddling underneath like a duck, like her feet are going, but above water, she was, she was as calm as could be. I learned some things I didn't know about the Manson, the Manson events. And I really want to go on as soon as they get it going, the Black Dahlia.
Yeah.
I really want to go on that one a lot. I'm looking forward to that. So if you're in town and you want to take one of these amazing tours, go to graveline.rip and put in Tipster40 and you will get 40% off, which is, first of all, the tours are priced really reasonably for what you get. And if you get 40% off, you're basically stealing. It's just such a great bargain. And they're such great people, and they care about what they do.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So I want to
and thank you, Adam. I love you. I very much appreciate, but Blaze let us know that you're super into the these weird conspiracy things about No, come on, man.
No, not about Manson, about everything.
Well, about everything, but she was specific about.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Oh, she was talking about this theory where Manson was part of MK Ultra.
Oh, well, actually, that makes perfect sense.
But he was put in by the CIA to have a group, and come on, it's way too far-fetched.
Who doesn't believe in that? Yeah. Okay, all right, whatever. Yeah. I'd forgotten that part, but yeah, I mean, I can picture Adam as kind of a conspiracy guy. I mean, he's kind of perfect for that, but I think, okay, first of all, just so you know, I call our amazing editor, Matt Kelly, MK Ultra. Oh. Because he's ultra.
Fitting. He is.
Yeah, MK he Ultra. Is. He's not psychedelic, but he is. I call him. It's just like a cute name.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's my little MK Ultra.
Yeah, I like it.
So we have 2 new patrons this week. Can you believe that, Joshua?
Wow. Hey.
2 new patrons. Welcome. Dr. K, who was responsible for telling us about Herschel Chandler's case, and Tipster Jim. And they both came in at the top tier as Tipster unicorns. And we are so grateful for their support. We really, we're so blessed that people support us. And I actually think now I'm about to break even.
Nice.
Yeah, because the podcast is never about making money.
Right.
But it would be nice to cover expenses.
Right.
And I've always been a little under with, editing and hosting the platform and getting it out there. And now I'm going to break even.
Sweet.
Yeah. So we really want to thank everyone for their amazing support of this podcast. And if you would like to support the podcast, Joshua will tell you a little bit about it at the end of the episode if you want to listen, because I've had people write in and say, how do I subscribe on Patreon? Yeah. So Joshua explains it at the end of every episode. Yeah. So you have 2 more weeks to enter. I know it's a lot of announcements up front, but 2 more weeks to enter for the drawing for the 2 keychains, key fobs, and the $20 Target gift card. And I'm going to be posting a picture on all the social medias so you can see them. They're really beautiful. Like one for you, one for a best friend, or for a mom or a family member or something. They're really adorable, and they're kind of perfect for Halloween. So we have several people have said, oh, I want to make sure I am entered, and they are, and a few new people entered. And here's all you have to do. Email us, find us on any of our social medias and say, hey, I'd like to be in the contest. And all you have to do is give us your name. And the only thing we ask is if you know of anyone who may enjoy the podcast, that you tell a friend about the podcast. If you feel so inclined, go to Apple Podcast or wherever you stream the podcast, and if it allows you to leave a rating or review, please do so. That's how people find us. We would be very grateful for that. And the person who made these wonderful key fobs will be drawing the winner.
Nice.
Yeah. Good. At the end of September, she'll be drawing the winner, and then we'll announce that, and then we'll send it to you by the beginning of October, so you can have it for the holiday Halloween season. I know it's not a holiday; it is if you're me, though.
Me too.
Yeah, big fan.
Yeah.
Also, Corrections Corner. It was brought to my attention that the person of interest that I mentioned last week in the Herschel Chandler case was not in the same fraternity as Dr. K and his other frat brothers. It was a completely different fraternity. Okay. So if it made it seem like he was in that one, he was in a fraternity, and he told me which one it was. I know it had the word theta in it, but he was not in the one.
Oh, it was one of those Greek letter ones?
It was like that. Yeah, okay. It was like that, but there are 3 of them, 3 words, and I don't pay attention to any of them. And he says it so quickly, like I'm supposed to, it's supposed to be top of mind for me. It's not. And you may be asking yourself, well, Melissa, how did the person of interest tell you what frat he's in? Because he called me back.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I mentioned in last week's episode that I had emailed on LinkedIn, and everyone and their brother I had emailed, I had phone called, and I got nothing. And wouldn't you know it, the one person I did not expect to call me back of all the people I called is the guy who is a person of interest that was mentioned to me, who was in a different frat. So we had a lovely conversation. He lives in a different state. It was a very interesting conversation. The reason I'm telling you this update now is because we talked after Joshua and I had recorded last week's episode. Mm-hmm. So he went to Hanover for his freshman year only.
Okay.
1983, and he left after the freshman year, ironically, right around the time Herschel was murdered.
At the
end of the year. It was May of 83.
All right.
Or no, yeah, 84. Sorry, May of 84. He started it in the fall of 83, his freshman year.
Okay.
Herschel's killed in May of 84, and he left after his freshman year.
Okay, so he was there at the same time, and and then he left right after.
Oh yeah, you're going to hear how there he was, which is it was the most bizarre conversation. He seemed very open and talking to me, and at first he was like, "Yeah, I never met the guy. I knew nothing about it." And I said, "Oh yeah, you may not have even, And he's like, "Oh, I was there, but I left after my freshman year. I was in a frat, but I pledged this frat and I got in, and I didn't think I'd get in or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So then he says, "Well, now that you mention it, 10 or so years ago, I was visited by the murder police."
The murder police?
That's what I call them. I was visited by the Indiana State Police in my state that I live in now.
Oh.
A long way away from Indiana.
So they traveled all the way to talk to him? Okay. So,
which most places don't do unless it's they think they're going to get some information because it's expensive. Sure. And
yeah.
So he said he got a call from a manager of where he worked, and they said, "Why are the murder police here looking for you?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And by then they'd made it to his home, and he answered the door, and he was willing to talk to them. And they said, "Can we interview you?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." He's very laissez-faire. He's not on the phone to me. He's not showing any sort of distress or, he's just like, "Yeah." I said, "Sure." So I went and talked to them, and then they wanted me to sign an affidavit. And I go, "An affidavit? What? Why would they want you to sign?" And he said, "Yeah, they wanted me to sign an affidavit saying," and I don't know if he misspoke or if this is true, and maybe somebody who went to Hanover can explain to me. He said they wanted me to sign an affidavit that I was in the building at the time of the murder, but I had nothing to do with it. And I was like, why would he be in the business admin building at 4:30 a.m. unless there was it was like live work, like maybe there was dorms.
The dorms are on the upper floors or something.
Doesn't seem feasible, but I don't know. Typically, those things are church and state; they're separate, like dorms here. But maybe Hanover is different. It's a small college. And I was like, "Did you sign it?" And he said, "No." And I'm like, "Okay." And he said, "In fact," I said, "give me a polygraph." And I said, "You asked them for a polygraph." And he said, "I did." And I said, "How did that go?" And he said, "Well, I guess it went okay. They took me someplace and the guy explained how it worked and all that and hooked me up. And then they they did the polygraph, and then they started apologizing profusely afterwards." And I said, "So you feel they're apologizing profusely because your results were that you passed?" And he goes, "I guess. They never told me." And I go, "Okay." And he goes, "But then they just kept pushing me to sign this affidavit." And I go, "That seems very odd." And he goes, "Yeah, that's when I started to get, kind of worried and was like, I'm going to call my friend who's an attorney." And he said he wasn't my attorney, but he is an attorney. So I called him and I said, "What did he say?" And he said, "I told him I took the polygraph." And I go, "Oh, okay. What did he say?" And he goes, "He was furious." And I go, "Why? Why would your attorney be furious?" I mean, basically a polygraph is something to see what your reaction is going to be. They're inadmissible in court. We know lots of people who pass them who are serial killers, and lots of people, we say this almost every episode, so many people who are completely innocent who fail them.
Right.
There's a myriad of reasons. Blood pressure medicine, look at me. I blow up digital shit.
Sure.
God knows what I'd do to a polygraph. They'd probably be like, she fucking killed 6 million Jews and she knows where Jimmy Hoffa is. I mean, I'd be blamed for everything that happened in history.
Then the machine blew up.
And killed the detectives. So now we add those murders onto her rap sheet. I mean, it just, I don't do well with machines. Yeah. So he apparently, according to him, passed. So they kept wanting him to sign an affidavit. And I was like, that seems super weird. I wish I knew what the wording was. And he was kind of hemming and hawing. And he goes, "Well, I issued a challenge." And I'm like, "Well, you seem like you're in the perfect position to challenge the murder police." He said, "I told them have every student that was on the campus of Hanover at the time of Herschel's murder to sign an affidavit, and then I would." I was like, "I don't think I get your thinking." I will just be honest with you. I called my one detective friend who is not in the jurisdiction, who's been shut down by, detectives who
are working on it. Right.
And he was shocked and surprised when I told him, this is what this person said, who, his name was bandied about as someone who could have been, it's 39 years old. Sure. Yeah. And who knows? It could have just been wildfire rumors.
Right.
But, so, he was he was interested and curious. And then I told him, I go, ISP went to speak with him. And he goes, they did? And I go, yeah. And they were asking him to sign an affidavit. And he goes, what did the affidavit say? And I said, I don't know. He said that he was to legally say admit he was in the building at the time of the murder, but had nothing to do with it. And I go, that seems like an odd wording for an affidavit.
Yeah, right.
And he said, yeah, I have one more contact I'm going to reach out to. He is a veteran crime scene tech. And if he wasn't around during the original case, he might have been around when they went to question this person of interest. So he's going to be talking to him. Cool. He's not giving up. And I said, I just want you to know I'm not giving up. And he said, I know you won't. And I said, I've left messages for your governor, Eric Holcomb. I've left voicemails and I've left emails. I've left voicemails and emails for the Jefferson County DA. I've left voicemails and emails for the Jefferson County, murder police, who we know they won't call me back since they won't call him back. And I've left voicemails and emails for Eric Holcomb's general counsel, Michael Nossett. So I'm going to keep doing that. But I said my next step is going to be the state attorney general. What do you think about that? And he said, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, good.
So he sanctioned me not stopping.
Good.
And let's hope that he gets some information.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. And I would really love to talk to this person of interest again. He, talked to me for probably 15 or 20 minutes, but I felt like I got a lot, but I want to talk to him some more.
He knows more than what he shared with you. I
don't know. I wish I could. He's very much an enigma.
Okay.
Like at first he's like, oh yeah, I didn't know the guy. I was just there my freshman year. He's very, blasé. And then it's like, well, now that you mention it, the murder police showed up out of state.
Yeah.
And questioned me, wanted me to sign an affidavit, and I volunteered for a polygraph. Would that be something you'd remember?
Yeah. All of that for sure. Right.
Now that you mention it, I was frisked and anally probed and accused of,
right?
Of killing Amelia Earhart. I mean, it's very odd.
I remember every single time I've been questioned for murder.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's right.
Even though you're innocent, it's like, oh yeah, you didn't have to remind me. Right. Oh, guess what? This happened.
Yeah.
I alluded to the fact, and the only person I told was Joshua, because very few people believe me. I went to Sam's Club to buy a couple things. I don't buy food there usually. I was hungry. It was lunchtime. I wanted one piece of fucking cheese pizza. So I get in line. Pizza. It's all right. It's a little doughy for me. And it's also big. It's like the size of a tire. I'm checking out.
And my fat ass gets a slice of pizza and a hot dog.
Oh, I don't know how you could. I couldn't eat the whole slice. I had the crust. I pulled the crust. Yeah. It's very big pieces of pizza. So all I want is a piece of cheese pizza for lunch. I'm just hungry. And I'm like the third person in line. I get up there, and the sweet girl who knows what she's doing, she is very efficient. Everything's with a scanner, a hand scanner, digital. And she keeps trying, and it won't ring up a piece of pizza. So she's like, I'm going to try to ring up a piece of pepperoni, but then, it'll be, and I'm like, fine. So she keeps trying. Nothing's working. She gets out a little card, like a credit card size card, and it's her employee card.
Okay.
With like a barcode. So
sign in.
Right. Okay. So she's trying, she logs out, tries to log back in. It now will not let her log in. Oh, so there are two registers at that counter. So she goes over to the second one and tries to log in there. It will not let her log in. It will not let her ring anything in. So she goes and gets a manager. And he's a sweet guy. And now there's 12 people deep behind me waiting for lunch or hungry. Yeah. And he tries everything. He goes to both registers. And what was so great is this young girl is like, see, it won't do this one. And mansplain comes in thinking he's going to show her something. You just
have to log back in.
And she would look at me and go like this and like roll her eyes. And I'm like, I understand. Don't tell him it's you. Do not tell him it's you. Don't let them know you're the fucking reason for this blowing up in front of them. Don't just smile. And I was feeling so bad. I'm like, you know what? This is God's way of saying, I don't need pizza. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay. And she goes, it doesn't matter. We have to ring you up and then these other, and I'm like, just trying not to cry, So he then has to go and get a female manager. So the three of them work together.
There's 3 behind the counter. There's 14 in line.
Yeah, for one fucking piece of cheese pizza because your friend Melissa is an alien and blows up digital items and will never, ever buy food at Sam's Club again. So I killed them both. So here's what happened. They come up with a solution. All right, you just have to ring everything in manually. So she has, yep. So she has to type everything in manually. She rang me up for something that wasn't wasn't cheese pizza because it's on like a menu board with the barcodes and all they do is hit it with their handheld scanner.
It
should be a quick
20
process.
Barcodes.
Yes.
Because they don't have that many items.
That's right.
Yeah.
Couldn't get anything to ring up. So she had to type in by hand and then she ended up typing in like the meat lovers pizza because it wouldn't accept the cheese pizza, but whatever it was, I was charged the right price. So I took my pizza and went home and then I was so nauseous I didn't eat it and wrapped it up and was like, why am I like this? Why does everything die in front of me?
But did you get Diet Mountain Dew at the fountain?
No, I was afraid to order anything else. All I wanted. I didn't even care, Joshua. I wanted a piece of pizza and to go home and eat it. And even that was ruined.
Oh, well. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I have to talk to my leader Zorak and see what we can do to reevaluate my electromagnetic bullshittery.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so not that this is related because this I think is a Zencastr problem. We recorded an entire episode last week that was beautiful and wonderful and it
was the best episode ever.
Oh, stop it. It was all right. And we're going to do another one, do it again next week. And Joshua will have forgotten everything that happened. Every single fucking detail that happened. It's perfect. It's perfect that you are you.
We can hit on both of our idiosyncrasies. You blow up mechanical, all of anything electronic, you murder. Any murder, I forget.
See what a beautiful relationship. This is a beautiful relationship. It's a perfection. It's hilarious. Oh, by the way, a male listener said we have an interesting, did he say dynamic or chemistry? But here's my favorite part. He said it's that will they, won't they? And I go, do they think we're going to have sex on the podcast?
I think maybe it sounds like our mics are really close and we're about to kiss.
Well, I am sitting on your lap facing you. Is that wrong? That's the way most people record a podcast, right? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I just thought it was so like cute. It was very like 1960s romantic. Like, will they, won't they?
Will they, won't they? All right.
This is not an episode of Moonlighting. He's not Bruce Willis. I'm not Sybil Shepherd. It was just, it was very cute. But the crux was he said we have a good dynamic.
Oh, so thank you.
Yeah. The fact that you have early onset dementia and that I murder digital items. There really couldn't be anything better.
It's perfect.
Yeah. All right. So I am a little bit crushed about that episode, but we're going to redo it and it'll be fine. I don't know why. I'm going to blame Zencastr, which is what my beloved Matt blamed too. He's like, they're just the worst. It just reverted to using the microphone on the computer as opposed to these beautiful microphones that my husband invested lots of money in. It makes Joshua and I sound good.
Yeah.
Now, this case was submitted by my beloved tipster, Jerry, and he submitted, I think, 2 different articles, and I found some other things. So our beloved Jerry loves things like creepy and said, how can you not love a story where somebody has to be dug up? So that's our Jerry.
Yay. All right.
This was in the news all over, and there's a connection to Kentucky. There's a connection to Arizona. Apparently at one point he lived in a different state, but it's really fascinating. And all these years later, when something gets solved, you think, wow, 36 years. It's just, there's nothing we can say that DNA is just the future, DNA evidence. And even all these years later, and then connecting him to other cases they did not know. This is the interesting part. This kid was 16 and started with murder. And maybe it was overkill and accidental. And then the next 3 sexual assaults they lived.
Oh boy.
I know. It's usually an escalation.
Right, right.
And here's the terrible, I even hate to say this. I'll show you later, and I might put a picture of him up, Joshua. But
okay.
So the victim, the murder victim, Cathy Sposito, a 23-year-old college student who was murdered in 1987 while hiking in Arizona, in Prescott, Arizona. He was a 16-year-old high school junior, and he looked like young, slightly dirty Brad Pitt.
Oh.
He looked like Brad Pitt from Thelma and Louise. He was a very handsome kid, and she was an exquisitely. No, he's pretty handsome. I don't like blondies with blue eyes, but he was a handsome kid.
Yeah, okay.
Handsome kid, murderer. She was 23-year-old college student who was absolutely beautiful. I don't know if Sposito is Italian or Hispanic, but she had long black hair. She was really quite gorgeous, and she made the mistake, which it should never be a mistake. You should be able to go hiking on your own.
Yeah.
But she usually went hiking with a boyfriend, and she went by herself. And he killed her on a hiking trail.
Jeez.
Middle of the day, people heard her screaming. By the time they got to her where she was already gone.
Wow.
And it was really a lot of overkill. A lot of overkill. So all these years, it went unsolved until 2015, a detective started investigating it and made a connection that there were a couple of other assaults, similar area, similar time of day. And they were sexual assaults, very brutal, but those women survived.
Okay.
So he's a 16-year-old high school junior who kills a 23-year-old woman and then continues to sexually assault women in a similar way. One woman he like grabbed at a grocery store in a parking lot, but the other ones were on this hiking trail and very aggressive and very brutal. And those women live, and they collect DNA. And then in 1994, he goes back to his home state of Kentucky. So he's originally from Kentucky.
Okay.
He goes back to his home state of Kentucky and he commits suicide.
Oh.
So in 2017, they exhume him.
Okay.
And they get DNA, and it comes down between he and a brother. And they decide after more testing that it's him.
Okay.
And that he is not only the murderer of Cathy Sposito, he has 3 other victims that lived.
Right. And
they believe there are absolutely more.
Wow.
So they're asking for our help. So, in 1987, beautiful Cathy is taking a hike in this gorgeous part of Prescott, the city in Prescott. It's Yavapai County. And she, is like, it's so like stabbed in the eye, beaten in the head, shot.
Oh my God.
Just like hit in the head with a rock, a wrench, shot in the eye, stabbed in the head.
Jesus.
He's 16 years old. He's 16 years old. This is June 13th of 1987. It's in the morning, middle of the day. Other hikers heard her scream for help, but by the time they got to her, she's gone. This area, this hiking trail is called Butte Trail, and it's always been thought of as safe. She was a junior. No, sorry. She was in college, and Bryan Scott Bennett was a junior at Prescott High School. He had moved from Calvin, Kentucky, and was only there for a year and a half. and then he withdrew from school. Now, he was kind of a fugitive and on the run. He stayed there for a while and then moved back to Kentucky, but they believe that he was behind these other 3 assaults. They know, but they also believe he was responsible for others, and they were hoping victims will come forward. So Cathy was camping with her boyfriend, and she went on this hike by herself. And a few minutes into the hike, Bryan Bennett snuck up behind her, held a rock to her head, attacked her. And then 2 months after that, he locked a girl in a room at a house party and tried to sexually assault her.
Jeez.
He was arrested, but this is one of those guys that slips through the cracks. Like, he gets caught, he gets arrested, and something always happens that lets him out.
Okay.
So he was acquitted, which is horrifying. In 1993, in June seems to be like a month that he goes back to. He kidnapped a woman at a post office at knife point. I said grocery store, but it's a post office. He sexually assaulted her multiple times. She was rescued when police happened to pull over the car they were both in.
Wow.
Bryan Bennett is arrested immediately, but never convicted of anything.
Wow.
A year later, in 1994, he moves back to Kentucky and he dies by suicide using a .22 caliber gun. And it was the same gun used on Cathy Sposito.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Yeah. So they, collected evidence at each scene. But, for 36 years, this case goes cold. And, like the sheriff is like, how could such an incredibly awful and atrocious thing happen to this beautiful girl in this wonderful place? And it takes them decades of forgetting about it, looking into it, forgetting about it, looking into it.
Right.
And then in 2015, an investigator said, we are going to get a group of cold case volunteers together and we're going to work on this case. And I'll be goddamned if they didn't take DNA samples from the wrench that, hit Cathy in the head. And they narrowed it down to 2 different people on the wrench, Cathy Sposito and Bryan Bennett.
Wow.
I know. And it was a group, it was this investigator heading up this group, but it was a group of volunteers who did,
Way cool.
It's one of those things. Thank God these people are open to accepting help from anywhere, I don't understand, law enforcement agencies that don't want help. I mean, maybe it isn't going to help. What's the worst? You've made that point. What's the worst that can happen?
Right. Nothing.
What's the best that can happen? Shit like this.
Right.
So what's so beautiful is during this press conference, the sheriff let one of the volunteers deliver the information and said it's 28 times more likely that Bryan Bennett contributed the DNA that was on the ratchet wrench statistically more than anyone else in the world. 28 times more likely.
Wow.
More than anyone else in the world. And they started looking at other crimes that happened in trails, parks, forests, and then they identified these other cases. In 1990, he had sexually assaulted another woman on the same trail, and it happened the same time of the day and the same location.
Wow.
I think that's pretty telling right there.
Sure.
By 2017, DNA information technology is more accessible. So they identify Bennett and then they start working backward on these other cases. So his remains are exhumed, his DNA profile is collected, and then March of 2023, they connect him to the other woman's case. Her name is not being released because she survives and she's a victim. The Chino Valley woman at the house party. And then the woman who was held at knife point in the post office. They didn't have enough information back then, but they do now. I know it's posthumous. He's dead, but at least.
No, but they're getting a little closure.
And they believe there are more. They believe there are more women than this because of his aggressiveness. They don't think it was just like once a June.
Sure.
They think that, he's a junior in high school.
Right.
Can you imagine? And he suicides himself by the age of 23. He had a daughter, his parents. So he did serve time in prison for forgery in Arizona. But then in 1993, he skipped out and became a fugitive.
Wow.
And went back to Kentucky. And then in January of 1994, he shoots himself with the same gun he used to shoot Cathy Sposito in the eye. And then they matched the DNA. And Sheriff David Rhodes from Yavapai County says, I can say with a high amount of confidence today that Cathy Sposito was murdered by Bryan Scott Bennett, and we believe there are more victims. We are hoping that they will come forward. So this is why we're covering this case, not just because Tipster Jerry asked us to, but because when law enforcement asks us for help, I want to do that. I want to get the word out there. I can't believe the number of listeners we have in Arizona also. It's really interesting to me. The two cities with the highest number of listeners for this podcast are Cincinnati and Los Angeles, which makes sense, where I'm from and where I live now.
Yeah.
But so the analytics for the platform that distributes this podcast shows you where, and occasionally I forgot to say thank you to the UAE, occasionally the UAE.
Oh, okay.
So we were back on the charts on the UAE and then we were off again, but they're very fickle, but they put us on the charts and they take us off. It's so interesting. God bless the United Arab Emirates because I can't even speak English. I know they probably learn to speak English much better than I do. I'm just so happy they listen. But if you know anything about Cathy Sposito's murder, about any of the other victims, if anything happened to you from a young man that looked like a dirty version of Brad Pitt, Bryan Scott Bennett, please contact the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office at 928-771-3260. That's 928-771-3260. And you know that you can always get us here at the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. You can always email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can find us on any of the social media platforms, the Just the Tipsters Facebook page, at JT Tipsters on Instagram, at JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter, and more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.